Hello, hello, and happy Monday. It is Monday, June 23rd, in the day of our Lord Donald Trump. And boy, has it just been a boring weekend, Ted. Nothing, nothing to talk about, nothing to report. The world is in perfect harmony now under Donald Trump. The United States is peaceful and prosperous, and everyone's doing great. The homelessness has been cured. I don't know if you heard, Ted, over the
That's
time.
awesome. Love
Yeah.
that. Love that.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So obviously you are tuned in to the TMI show, the Ted Manila Information Show, because we bring you way too much information, even if it's just pipe dreams like what I just spouted off there. Because of course none of that is true. But what is true is we are again at the cusp of World War III. Ted and I had been saying this for years under the Biden administration when the U.S. went to a proxy war with Russia over Ukraine. But now that's so passe, Ted. Donald Trump is in office. So now the potential for World War III has moved back to our favorite geopolitical location, and that would be the Middle East and Iran. So that is going to be the main topic that we're going to be talking about today. Not only the actual events itself that happened on at a weird time on Saturday, but there is, to be fair, Ted, those bombings happened because freaking Iran has a 7.5 hour time difference from Washington. 7.5, not 7, not 8, 7.5 hours. So, yeah, so we'll be talking about the actual logistics of that and what actually transpired. But then, because of that, the MAGA mega divorce or divide, I think this is it. There were murmurings of the MAGA world being upset, obviously, because there's like the Elon camp or whatever people, what they call, woke MAGA. And then what I would classify more as Trump sycophants, Ted, because it's more of like, he's Lord Donald Trump, and I don't know, maybe they're afraid he's going to be like King Louis or King Henry VIII and just, off with everyone's heads. But there's those two camps, right? The people that were true MAGA conservatives that are America first, and that they were more about the movement and not the man, versus the other side that is they're Trump fanboys. I mean, I don't know how else to describe them.
Well, let's go ahead and bring in our guest, Manila, and I'll bring us up to date as Jeff listens. Let's
Get
go
us up
ahead.
to speed.
All
All
right,
right.
here we go.
So joining us right now to discuss all of that is friend of the show, Jeff Dornick. He is the founder and CEO of Pickaxe, a brand new free speech social media company that you guys can all go ahead and join. Let me pop his name up there. And Jeff also hosts a podcast. Jeff, I'm sorry, tell us the name of the podcast again.
So I've actually got two shows. So on Tuesdays,
Two.
I've got the Jeff Dornick Show, and then on Wednesdays I have Unsanctioned, which is the show that I co-host with Matt Couch, and that one is a little kind of off the wall a little bit. So like my show is almost exclusively politics. On Unsanctioned, it's kind of like whoever we want to talk to. So like last week we talked to like the head of events for Disney. So we talked all like Disney and like how they do things at Disneyland and like all that kind of stuff. We're bringing on some stand-up comedians. We're bringing on some musicians and some wrestlers. So we're just kind of like whatever we want to talk about, we talk about on that one. So.
Very cool. I need to, if you guys ever get that guy back on from Disney, I would love to hear if he would touch on the topic of, the so-called gayest place on earth where.
Yeah. Well, like it's funny because he's the head of like all events for corporate Disney, right? And I've been friends with him for years. Actually, my wife and I met him on our honeymoon in Hawaii because we were staying right next door to the Disney Hotel Aulani, and we met him literally over like breakfast at our hotel, and we've just stayed friends and whatever it is. But what's interesting is we're talking to him, and he's pretty conservative and all that kind of stuff, which is interesting working for Disney. But what's interesting is he's like he's basically having to organize like the pride events that are happening at Disneyland right now and like all that kind of stuff. And so it's interesting how seeing him as a more conservative guy, but then also having to implement the corporate culture that they're pushing at Disneyland. So there's some interesting contrast there.
Oh yeah, that would be fascinating. What a strange, I don't know, call it a bedfellow. I don't know that he would be in that position given his personal values. But anyway,
Yeah.
that so you can go check out Jeff's random show as as well as his political show. Available on YouTube and what, Rumble also?
I'm banned on YouTube, so you can find us on Rumble and Spotify. So I think I've been banned like 6 times off of YouTube. So
Good times. Ted and I know what that censorship is like. So first, Ted, get us up to speed in case anyone decided to turn off the TV, and I don't blame
To
them.
sleep in for the weekend.
Yeah,
Here we go.
I don't blame them. I don't blame them. Tell us what happened.
Iran continues to promise retaliation for those American strikes on their critical nuclear facilities as it launched another wave of missiles and drones against Israel. Abdul Rahim Mousavi, the new chief of staff of the Iranian armed forces, said that the U.S. had violated Iran's sovereignty when it attacked the Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan nuclear sites on Sunday and had entered the war clearly and directly. Ibrahim Zolfagari, acting as spokesman for Iran's retaliatory strikes against Iran, said in his latest TV statement that the American attacks were meant to revive the dying Zionist regime, but will actually serve to expand the scope of the legitimate and various targets of the Iranian armed forces and create grounds for expanding war in the region. Referring to Trump, Zolfagari said, and gambler Trump, you may start this war, but we will be the ones to finish it. Not ominous at all. Iran's army announced earlier today local time that it had fired dozens of one-way drones with anti-fortification explosive warheads at Israel. It said that the majority of the projectiles fired since the early hours of the day had successfully reached their targets. We don't know if that's true or not. Sirens were sounding across Israel before noon local time, with a large number of impacts recorded in several areas, including the Ashdod area in southern Israel and the Lachish area that's south of Jerusalem. Trump also raised the question of regime change as senior officials in the administration warned Tehran not to retaliate. It's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? MAGA, as Trump wrote on Truth Social. Trump's post came after officials like J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth stressed that they were not trying to overthrow the government of Iran. This mission was not and has not been about regime change, Hegseth said, calling it a precision operation targeting Iran's nuclear program. Vance said, our view has been very clear that we don't want regime change. Operation Midnight Hammer was known only to a small number of people in Washington and at the U.S. military's HQ for Middle Eastern operations in Tampa. 7 B-2s flew for 18 hours from the U.S. into Iran to drop 14 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs. That, according to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. In total, there were 75 precision-guided munitions, including more than 24 Tomahawk missiles and 125 military aircraft involved in the operation against 3 nuclear sites. This pushes the Middle East, of course, to the brink of a major new war in a region already aflame for more than 20 months with wars in Gaza and Lebanon and a toppled dictator in Syria. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mr. Keane, said initial battle damage assessments indicate that all 3 sites sustained extremely severe damage, but there's no sense of whether the Iranians were able to get their nuclear stuff out before it happened. UN nuclear watchdog chief Rafael Grossi was more cautious. He said that while it was clear that the airstrikes did hit the enrichment building, there's no way to know what things look like underground. A senior Iranian source told Reuters on Sunday that most of the highly enriched uranium at Fordow, which had been refined to up to 60%, had been moved to an undisclosed location before the U.S. attack. Manila, would tend to believe that because there was satellite imagery showing dozens of semi-trucks lined up outside Fordow about 3-4 days ago. So it's very likely that they got their stuff out. I mean, certainly they knew this was coming. All the signs were there. So I don't think this was exactly a surprise to Iran or anyone else.
No, I do believe Donald Trump did say that he warned Iran. So as much as this was supposed to be a surprise attack, there's evidence to suggest that they were warned. Maybe they weren't warned about the exact date, the exact time, but they were warned because, I think the key indicator was that no human life was lost at any of these 3 facilities. At least none that are reported so far. So that said, that night, Saturday night, social media erupted, right? And especially the world where Jeff comes from, the conservative circles. It was suddenly just sibling rivalry on two different sides. We have the Laura Loomer sides, who, you know, I've said many times is batshit crazy. Um, but you know, I mean, sometimes broken clocks are right, but at least twice a day. This time, you know, the other, you know, all the other hours of the day, Ted, it's wrong. And she was attacking Jeff. She was attacking um, Thomas Massey. She was attacking and anybody that didn't fall in line behind Donald Trump. Um, and I feel like if you look at that like 3-minute speech after the bombings that Trump gave at 10 p.m. Eastern time when he walked over the same hallway that Barack Obama did when if you guys recall when Barack Obama announced the death of Osama bin Laden. But this time Trump was flanked with JD Vance, Marco Rubio, and Pete Hegseth. And if you pay attention to when they're walking away, Marco Rubio has this oh shit look on his face. He walked away. I mean, he had his
He
head
always
literally,
has that look on his face.
he had his head down, like either he was scrambling to like, oh my God, what is in store for me this weekend? I'm gonna have to do the media rounds. How am I gonna answer to this? And sure enough, if you look at the media rounds he did on Sunday and all the Sunday talkies, he was flustered. He had no response about nothing tangible and real other than to say that, you know, this was the right thing to do. What do you say to all that, Jeff? I mean, I feel like even behind closed doors, Trump world is not really cool with this decision.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the Trump sycophants that, like you said, where they just, you know, anything that Trump does is good because Trump does it. You know, I feel like I was getting flashbacks with a lot of the justifications for this, going back to the WMDs back with Iraq, and it was the same, you know, line of thinking, and you know, it was really interesting because the thing that I kept hearing is that, you know, our intelligence keeps telling us that that they have access to nuclear weapons and that they're developing this and they're doing this, and you're like, they also told us that Iraq had WMDs. So are they actually trustworthy? What's actually going on here? And then there was this narrative that was going around, and I think a lot of that launched from that conversation between Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz, where Ted Cruz had brought up that Iran had hired hitmen in order to assassinate Donald Trump. And you know, even like Tucker's like, I haven't heard about that. What the heck is going on here? And why aren't we already at war? And I thought that was a very good question, because
it's a very good question.
If Iran had actually hired hitmen multiple times to assassinate Donald Trump, the president of the United States, and there's no retaliation, silence for the first however many months of this presidency,
no national manhunt,
nothing. Like you know, and everybody's pulling up articles going back to November that, you know, somebody was arrested. It was like, I think it was a Pakistani national that had been allegedly hired by the Iranian government to do X, Y, and Z. And they're like, see, this is proof. And I'm just sitting here and I'm like, okay, so why was everybody silent about this? Why didn't Donald Trump, the second that happened, get up on stage and say, look, this is happening. We are going to wreak havoc. We're going to bring hell on earth to Iran because they're trying to take out the incoming president of the United States. There should have been some sort of like, okay, Iran is our enemy because guess what? They're trying to take out the president of the United States. And instead it was kind of like, we're just going to move on and just ignore this happened, until all of a sudden you just bring this out on the red carpet as if this has been on everybody's mind the entire time. And everybody's like, I haven't heard about this. What are you talking about? It was on some obscure articles on, you know, mainstream media, that are like 5 pages behind on the website. And you're just like, what the heck is going on? But again, they're pushing narratives, and I'm just getting flashbacks to Iraq. Let's go to war in the Middle East. We've got to stop them from getting WMDs. And then you're seeing the reports coming out now that Iran was 10 to 12 months out from being able to connect them. It's like, what was the urgency? I don't understand any of this.
Well, Jeff, you remember the whole WMD thing? One of the most iconic pictures for WMDs was the Colin Powell, little test tube picture
Of fake anthrax.
Right. And this weekend, what we saw was Tulsi Gabbard was being compared to that, because Tulsi, back in March, I mean, literally just a few weeks ago, at the end of March, it hasn't, it's only been like 2 months, she reposted her now infamous quote of literally saying that the IC has no evidence at this
I wouldn't
point.
call it infamous. I would call it truthful and most likely accurate.
Right. Well, that the IC had the whole of the intelligence apparatus of the United States has zero evidence that Iran was developing nuclear weapons. Although the full quote, she goes on to say, and I'm paraphrasing, is that they have enriched to the highest levels that they ever have, but there's also no evidence that they're pursuing a nuclear weapon. And so she reposts that because everyone was posting that clip of her. She's like, here's the full context. And then she basically backtracks on what she said in the video, but it really doesn't.
But we know that what was said in the video was true. And you know how we know it? Because if it wasn't true, angry members of the intelligence community, whether it be at CIA or elsewhere, would have spoken out. They would have leaked it. They would have complained. It's true that was the assessment of the intelligence community. So it's interesting. I mean, so I guess here's the question, right? I mean, this is a two-parter for you, Jeff, and Manila too. I'd like to hear what you have to say too. This can go in one of two ways. This can end up being this incident over the weekend can be the end of it. It could be the end of military action against Iran by the U.S. In a month, we may be all talking about something else, and then, or this could be, there could be a retaliatory strike against U.S. interests or U.S. assets or U.S. troops in the Middle East that then draws the U.S. into a deeper conflict. But either way, how does it play out in that division, which looks almost like down the middle, like a 50-50 split within the GOP coalition between the sort of nationalist, America First, populist wing of the MAGA movement that existed before Donald Trump ran for office, and the Trump cultist / Republican neocon kind of alliance of convenience that sprung up at a certain point here. I mean, maybe there's 3 or 4 segments really, but I'm trying to make it simple.
Oh yeah. There's definitely different factions of the crowd that voted for Trump, and everybody kind of has their own take and their own perspective. And I think that's the hard part in all of this, is that it's not just like a two-way divide. It's kind of splintering off, and everybody kind of has their own takes on this. And I think specifically with this, I think Donald Trump actually, he brought together Kennedy Democrats, he brought together the Elon Musk tech crowd, and he brought together a bunch of different coalitions during this last election. And there was a good segment of that crowd that was very anti-war, very anti-regime change, no new wars. And if you notice, when Donald Trump was running for president and running for re-election, he kept saying, like, look, I'm the only president that didn't start any new wars over the however many last presidents that we've had. He kept touting that over and over and over again. But then when you do this, and you have Lindsey Graham, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence, all the typical neocons that are applauding this, you're like, are you really on the right side of this, or are you aligning yourselves with the very people that we voted against? Because from a lot of the people in the Trump base, our thought process was this last election and getting Trump in there, it wasn't a focus on Democrat versus Republican, which is the historical way of looking at things. It was establishment versus the people. And I think, and that includes guys like Lindsey Graham and Mike Pence and all these guys that you're voting for Trump to take on the establishment. You're not necessarily voting on Trump to take on the Democrat Party. And I think that that's where this is getting really frustrating for a larger percentage of the base, is like, this is not what we voted for. We did not vote for this. And also, I think that this is, for me, the way that I look at this as well, is that obviously Israel and Iran are going back and forth, and they're throwing missiles at each other, and they're in the middle of basically a war between each other, right? Now, if Iran was actively invading Israel, I could understand Donald Trump coming and say, look, we're going to provide support. We're going to help defend Israel because they're getting attacked by Iran. Israel's
Of
our
course.
ally, all that kind of stuff. But when Israel is going on the offense, and you can say whether or not that's justified because of Iran's alleged, involvement in October 7th and the whole deal, that's fine. But this is Israel's war. This is not our war.
Clearly.
And again, if Iran was invading Israel, I could understand we're going to come in and we're going to provide support, and we can even go on the attack, and we'll drop missiles or whatever it is on Iran because we're helping our ally from being invaded. But this is totally different, and this is where I don't see how anybody with an America First worldview and with the worldview of Donald Trump's foreign policy historically can justify saying Israel's going on the offensive, so we're going to go on the offensive because we have to have their back. No, this is Israel's war.
It's a violation of international law because there's you're not allowed to wage preemptive war unless the threat is imminent. Jeff, let me ask you about a factor that I don't think anyone else is going to talk about today, which is the passive non-voters. There were many, many Democrats and liberals and progressives who didn't like Kamala Harris because of her inaction on Gaza and so on. And they didn't vote for Donald Trump, but they also didn't vote for Kamala Harris. They just didn't vote. There may be as many as 12 million of them. Donald Trump is president in part because of these non-voters who basically, in part, thought, if Donald Trump did get elected, it wouldn't be the end of the world because, in part, we like his skepticism of foreign interventionism. We're okay with that. We're not scared of Donald Trump, even though we may disagree with him about a lot of stuff. So we're just going to sit on our hands. They're a factor too, right? I mean, they're disappointed today.
Yeah, no, they definitely are. I think that this is where, for me, and this is just looking at from my perspective, I've kind of walked away from the Republican Party during this last election cycle. I walked away from Trump, and I backed RFK Jr. And then the only reason I voted for Trump was because Kennedy came back in and they aligned and like the whole deal. And I wanted to get Kennedy in there with HHS, right? There's a lot of disaffected, even Republicans that still voted for Trump because it was Trump versus Kamala. And like you said, there's a lot of Democrats that didn't vote at all in this last election because it was Trump versus Kamala. And so I get that. But I think that what's been interesting for me specifically is that I feel like this second term has been severely disappointing to me. And then a lot of those people that either, came from the Democrats or independents and voted for Trump, or like you said, those disaffected, Democrats, right? It's been very disappointing because there's been all sorts of promises that have not been kept. And the ones that have allegedly been kept, it's all been a facade. It's all for a headline. But then when you actually look at the crux of it, they're not actually implementing anything. We were promised all these files. We weren't given them. Like, you could just go down this list. And so with this, it's like, okay, Donald Trump has touted, I'm the only president that hasn't started any new wars. And then what does he do? He goes in and bombs Iran. And you could say, well, they're just mincing words, right? Is they're like, well, he's not starting a war. It's just a military strike. Okay, but how do you think that this actually plays out? Like, you're going on the offensive, bombing Iran with a country with 100 million people in their country, 90 million people in their country. It's a pretty decent size country, about a third of the size of the United States of America. So we're going to go on the offensive. And what do you think is going to happen? That they're just going to roll over and say, "Oh yeah, you bombed us. We're done. We surrender." All that. No, this gets us sucked into a war. I think it's a very slim chance that they just roll over and surrender. We're going to get sucked into another war in the Middle East. How did they think that this would play out? And then Donald Trump is starting to
we are in a war in the Middle East. This is a war. The U.S. is at war with Iran, and Iran gets to decide whether they're going to keep fighting or not, right? It's not like Trump says, like in his message, "Oh, thank you for your attention to this matter. Now is the time for peace." Iran will decide whether now is the time for peace.
This is an act of war. And when you have people, members of Congress, like I have Thomas Massey's tweet up there, all he says is this is not constitutional.
He's right.
This is, and he's absolutely right, because Congress did not vote on this. Congress didn't vote on the W&D war in Iraq and Afghanistan either. So
Well,
I don't know when,
there was more authorization there, because there was the 2000
right,
post 9/11 authorization to use military force, which they relied upon.
Yeah, and a bullshit old AUMF. But this one is like it was unilateral action on behalf of Donald Trump. So Massey is a hardcore constitutionalist, tweets this. Trump now, I don't know if you guys heard, just literally early this morning, Trump has launched a brand new, I don't know if it's like a PAC, but at least some sort of group to unseat Thomas Massey, who is actually wildly popular in his districts. I don't think he's going to stand in any position to lose it. I think the people of Kentucky really, really support Thomas Massey. And I think what that shows is Donald Trump, like, this is over his head. Like, he doesn't get that all these people, including people like me, who I'm technically a registered Democrat, and I voted for him mostly because I did not support Biden, and I was not going to support Harris. I traditionally vote outside of the Democratic Party ever since Al Gore, but I wasn't going to vote for them. So I voted for Trump as a rebuke of the Democratic Party, right? So there are people like me who were furious this weekend because
although, Manila, I would, seriously, I've got to say, I can't let it lie. I mean, you knew that Donald Trump was a big Zionist. You knew he was deep in the pockets of Israel.
Yeah, but so was Kamala Harris. So
right, but I'm just saying, you knew Trump was like this on Israel.
One of the two Zionists was going to win. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, Israel wins. America never wins. I just wanted to be able to say one time,
you voted for a Zionist. You got a Zionist.
And if you voted Harris, you would have gotten a Zionist. It didn't matter if I voted for Jill Stein like I have in the past. She's not going to win.
I didn't vote for a Zionist.
She's not going to win.
Ironically, I voted for the Jew who's not a Zionist.
Right. I love Dr. Stein. She's a lovely, lovely human being. I've met her many times, interviewed her many times, and I loved her and I've supported her many times. But in this particular dog race, I voted for Trump because one thing was for sure, he proved there was evidence in his last term that he did not get us involved in any new wars. So I thought, well, at the very least, I can have that. If I vote for Kamala Harris, she's just going to continue her backroom deals that she had with Benjamin Netanyahu anyway. And I thought maybe this time, since Trump would be a lame duck, then maybe, just maybe, he might, put out a stiff arm to Benjamin Netanyahu and say, screw all of you. I'm running with my America First platform, and I'm going to mean it this time. But of course, he's failing us again, and because it's every last neocon that chirps in his ear, whether it's Mark Levin or it's Sean Hannity or it's Lindsey Graham whispering sweet nothings and batting his big eyes at him. Somebody gets to Donald Trump and he's like, okay, let's issue this. And then he goes after people like Thomas Massey because Massey stated an actual factual statement. What Trump did was unconstitutional.
Yeah. Well, and I think to kind of, piggyback off of that as well is like you look at Thomas Massey, who is looking at the process of, how you're supposed to declare war, how you're supposed to do things. And then Donald Trump and the MAGA sycophants, they're looking at it from the perspective of the ends justify the means. And so to them, it's well, we have to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. So how dare you say that this isn't constitutional? It's like, but there is a process there, and it's there for a reason. So that way you don't just have a president going rogue and declaring war and going into all these different kinds of wars. And that's not his authority. Yes, he's the executive in chief, but also or the commander in chief, but also on the flip side, there is a process for he cannot go to war unless Congress declares it.
Yeah, the only exception is if it's like, let's say the Canadians cross the border.
Right.
Trump doesn't have to wait to ask Congress for permission. The president, it's like, that's an imminent emergency. got to take care of it right away, deploy troops. Although to sustain the war, he would have to go to Congress. But in the immediate, and there was no emergency, and I think that's the crux of the matter here, right? I mean, and I think that's where there would be doubt in Congress, including among some Republicans. There's really zero evidence that Iran was planning to create. I mean, there's a fatwa against it, right? I mean, they're going to have, if they change course, they're going to have to radically reverse their course. The Iranian government's been very clear here that they didn't want nuclear weapons. And I want to be clear, there's no reason they shouldn't have them. There's no law against it. The U.S. doesn't get to decide who gets them. They can join the nuclear club if they want. They haven't broken any laws. They haven't done anything wrong. They didn't lose any wars that required them to promise not to have them. I mean, it's who are we to tell them what to do?
Yeah, well, it's a good point, because it's like from if you're looking at things very pragmatically, you could make the argument that, look, we don't want a country like Iran to have nuclear weapons from a pragmatic standpoint. But also, when we're looking at it from just like you could say a constitutional perspective or whatever, like, why are we getting involved somewhere else? We keep saying we're America first, and if you notice, back in Trump's first term, he kept telling all these other countries, look, put your country first. I'm going to put America first. You put your country first. And then other countries do that. Maybe they have a different worldview than us. And again, I totally disagree with a lot of the worldview that's in Iran and all that kind of stuff. At the same time, you can't make this argument that, look, we're going to put America first. You're going to put your country first. And, and now he's even saying, like, make Iran great again. It's like, well, they're doing what they think is best for their country at that time. As long as there's not an imminent threat on us, which there's zero evidence that there is, I don't know why we're getting involved in the politics and the decisions of a government in another country that has nothing to do with us. And that for me is what's really frustrating about all this, is you got somebody like Massey that's basically saying, like, look, why are we getting involved in this? And I'm also looking at this from the perspective of, look, we're massively in debt as a country, like massively in debt. So, for us to support Israel in this war with Iran, we have to go borrow money from China and other countries and other entities with interest. And then we then funnel that money to Israel to fight this war that we have to pay back with interest. Why isn't Israel just bypassing us and just going and borrowing money at interest and let them pay back? Like, that's what I don't understand. It would be one thing if we had a surplus, we had extra money, like, oh yeah, we've got an extra several $1 billion here. Israel, take this, go do this. It's, free money. We'll want to support you, the whole deal. But why do we have to go borrow money from somewhere else and pay interest back and funnel it to Israel?
Well, Jeff, I think I'm really glad that you brought that up. That we pay between $3 and $4 billion a year to Israel, not including the supplemental stuff for wars like this, right? That's just their general thing, and people forget why we do
allowance,
that.
Ted.
But like, I know you guys remember, this all comes out of the Camp David Accords, right? So Jimmy Carter told Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin, all right, you crazy kids, how about if you'll stop fighting if I pay you guys $3 or $4 billion a year, like forever. And both Egypt and Israel were like, okay. And they stopped fighting. Well, Egypt kept up their end of the bargain. They haven't started any wars with anyone. They're not like bombing foreign countries. They're doing their part, right? Israel is not fulfilling their end of the bargain. They were told, you're going to calm down in exchange for $3 billion a year. They haven't calmed down. I think it's like a parent would cut off their allowance.
Right. When your kid misbehaves, you take away the allowance, or you take away the iPad, or you take away their Robux, like you don't keep giving them like unfettered access to your bank account. Otherwise, you end up raising a Hunter Biden.
Yeah. Or a Bibi Netanyahu, and there's something, and there's, look, okay, I'm the lefty here. Okay, you guys tell me. Isn't there something galling about the United States? You want to be America first, make America great again. It's galling enough to be pushed around by some other country. But for it to be a little pipsqueak little country the size of New Jersey that doesn't even have oil or natural resources worth talking about, and really no interesting geopolitical status whatsoever, to be pushed around by this tiny little country the size that has a population of New York City, and this is the size of New Jersey, it's a little crazy, isn't it?
I don't get it.
Well, so but we also have to remember, and again, I'm not one of those guys, because again, then there's factions both on the left and the right that are like very like anti-Israel, and even on the right, like I've been dealing with a lot of people that are like extremely anti-Semitic, and it's always the Jews. It's
Right.
always I've never been one of those guys, right? But also, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this, and I'm like, why are we having to get involved with this? But I think you bring up a good point, is that number one, there is a religious component. So there's a lot of, especially within the Republican Party, about why we get involved. And I think it's based on a warped understanding of God's promise to Abraham in the book of Genesis, where he was talking about the Jewish people, not necessarily the Israeli government. And I think that Ted Cruz really exemplified that warped theological understanding of the book of Genesis. But then I think the other component that we can't ignore is Mossad is probably the top intelligence agency in the world. And and we do know as well, when you're dealing with like the Epstein files and everything that happened down there, both I would argue both CIA and Mossad used Epstein, and probably some other people as well. I've seen evidence that they also did this with Hugh Hefner, with Playboy, possibly with Diddy as well. They use the same tactics in order to blackmail world leaders or influential people in order to implement their agenda. And so when we're looking at it from that perspective, it could be that our intelligence agencies and Israel's intelligence agencies are both involved in these really corrupt, sinister, very dark, horrific things, and to where we do have a mutual interest from a governmental intelligence agency standpoint to kind of cover each other's backs. And it's like, if we turn our back on Israel, then they can come out and blow this lid wide open, and vice versa. So there probably is some sort of like mutual, like, we've got each other's backs because we're both blackmailing each other for blackmailing other people, basically.
Yeah, it definitely seems like there's definitely a sinister alliance. I think at some point the spell's going to break, like it always does when things are this crazy, and we're going to look back. People will look back on this and think, why were they so scared of the Israelis? It's going to be like, what?
Yeah. No. Well, and I think that, again, this is probably the same reason why all of the JFK files are not being released, and all the Epstein files not being released, and all these things is because there's people in our intelligence agencies that are covering their own rears, and that's really what it comes down to. There, I think to a certain degree, our intelligence agencies have been so corrupt, and they've violated so many laws that for example, on my network, we've got one of our top shows is called Two Mics, and one of the co-hosts of that show is Dr. Michael Scheuer, former CIA guy, right? He's literally, his job under both Bush and Clinton was to track Osama bin Laden, go back to the Oval Office and tell them, here's where Osama is. Do you want me to take him out? And every time no, he's fine. We're just keeping an eye on him. All that kind of stuff. But it's interesting because he came out. And he's exposed the CIA. He's very anti-Mossad and all that because of his personal dealings with these agencies and all that. And he's literally said multiple times, and I think on my show as well, he's like, there is no reforming the CIA. He's like, it literally needs to be burned down to the ground and started over from scratch. There is no fixing it because of how corrupt the entire system is. And he's like, the system is set up to where even the well-intended agents and people that are hired in the CIA, like, they are by definition corrupted because of the way that the process is set up within the agency. And so it's like, when you're looking at it from this perspective, it's probably the same thing with Mossad and how corrupt our government is and how corrupt our intelligence agencies are, is that it's like they have to cover themselves because it covers up the entire system, because this would implicate probably the entire government of our country when you think about it. And I think that's why probably there is some level of, we have to protect Israel because we have to protect ourselves.
One big question for you guys.
Stage 4 metastasized cancer is what the CIA has become. Like, there is no saving it. There's no radiation you can do. There's not, like, it is fried, and it is destroying this country from the inside out. And honestly, you should talk to our friend John Kiriakou and have him on your show to discuss. I mean, obviously he was the only one, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Ted. I think John Kiriakou is the only former CIA whistleblower to ever face the Espionage Act.
I believe that's true. I'd have to look into that for sure. But let me ask both of you guys. All right, let's just game this out a little bit. The Iranians say they're not done. They could be done. They could not be done. I mean, they're weak right now. They might decide that revenge is best served later and colder. That's probably what I would do if I were them, but they have internal domestic considerations as well. Iranian citizens are jonesing for revenge. So,
Sure.
I mean, if they attack, let's say they kill some American troops in the Persian Gulf, where does MAGA world stand then?
Well, can I jump in real quick, Jeff? I mean, this is part of the problem with that is look, we started before these weekend attacks happened in Iran. We relocated, I guess we could call it that, the USS Nimitz, like this 50 or 60-year-old carrier strike group that's due to be decommissioned next year, like in a few months, like literally 6-7 months from now. It's due to be retired. They're gonna break the last bottle of champagne on it, retire the thing. But suddenly, instead of sailing that sucker back home, why are they moving it towards the Red Sea? They're positioning it to be struck, to be like false flag. They're putting our soldiers, our men and women, and I have active duty blood relatives that if a war with Iran were to break out, this would impact. The USS Nimitz would be there as sitting ducks.
And how would you feel about
all of our bases?
Manila? How would you feel if the Nimitz were struck by Iran and it cost the lives of American sailors?
My point.
So how would the MAGA? Not that you're a MAGA person,
not MAGA,
how do you think MAGA world would respond?
I don't false flags, Jeff. I mean, we saw the rally around the flag effect after 9/11. Everybody on the left and right rallied behind George W. Bush, even with a dearth of any evidence. It didn't matter. It was the rally around the flag effect, which is exactly what's happening in Iran right now. They're having a rally around the flag moment.
But I think that's what Trump's counting on.
Just like they did when Trump in the first term killed Qasem Soleimani, right? They had a huge, I mean, if you saw video from Qasem Soleimani's wake or funeral, there were tens of millions of people in the street, tens of millions, like a sea of people marching in Tehran for, to celebrate the life and show respect to this man. So we're seeing right now a rally around the flag effect in Iran. And I feel like potentially the same thing would happen here if the USS Nimitz got struck. But of course, we have to point out the fact that the DOD under Pete Hegseth directed them to move there, putting them in a position to be sitting ducks. We have bases all over Kuwait. We have tens of thousands of people in Kuwait. We have thousands of others scattered around in embassies and smaller military installations all around Iran that would be sitting ducks.
So Manila, answer my question. What will happen if that happens?
I think all of America starts rallying around the flag, because all it takes is a visceral moment like Pearl Harbor to get everybody around.
And everyone forgets how we got there. Is that basically it?
We've seen this stupid playbook over and over and over. And this is what happens, undoubtedly. It's human nature. You're going to rally around your president, whoever it is, whether it was Harris or Trump. If something happens to your people, there's going to be a rally around the flag effect. And it's been proven time and time and time again, over and over, all through history. And I don't think that's going to change, because that's human nature. It's not a party, it's a bipartisan thing. It's just human nature. However, I do want to point out that Democrats loved what, outside of Ro Khanna, Democrats loved that Trump did this. People like Chuck Schumer, who are also Zionists, are quietly supporting Donald Trump's actions in Iran. They love this. So you're already seeing a bipartisan agreement and support for what he's doing here, because Democrats, just like the neocons, also get their pockets greased by all the same, weapons manufacturers. And then they're starting to demonize this guy on screen, Tucker Carlson, who's speaking out against it. And if you don't mind, Jeff, can I play the soundbite so we can? I mean, it speaks to this exact thing, and you can respond to it.
Who really love Trump. He's a deeply humane, kind person. And I am saying this because I'm really afraid that my country's going to be further weakened by this. I think we're going to see the end of American empire. Obviously, other nations would like to see that, and this is a perfect way to scuttle the USS America on the shoals of Iran. But it's also going to end, I believe, Trump's presidency and effectively end it. And so that's why I'm saying this.
What do you mean by that? That's coming from you. That's
you get. Look, I knew Bush. I knew George W. Bush. We had, family connections to Bush. I knew Bush personally. I still see Bush sometimes, and of course, he hates me, and he does because I criticized him on Iraq, and that war is the sum total, from a historical perspective, of his administration. But I knew him, and he had all kinds of plans for the things that he wanted to do. But once domestically
right.
to improve the country.
Right.
And you may agree or disagree, but like in his mind, he wasn't just about the invasion of Iraq in March of 2000.
Oh, no. He would redo Social Security. He had all this,
100%.
all types of, he was going to take care of the entitlements issue.
And he really thought it was going to work.
Yep.
And you could laugh at that or whatever, but the point is, the second you get enmeshed in a real war, not a fake, let's go bomb the villagers and declare success, though we don't even have a good track record. Like, why are the Houthis still there? I mean, there's a whole other question,
right.
which is how prepared is the U.S. military for a real conflict? And the answer is totally unprepared. Scary unprepared. I don't think people understand that. But anyway, the only reason I'm saying any of this is because I really, really care. I actually really love Trump.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about, and obviously a lot of the MAGA world has been bashing Tucker. Interestingly, Bannon obviously has been very open with, it's pretty in alignment with Tucker. Obviously, there's variances and all that kind of stuff. But I think what's really interesting is that Tucker is bringing a very valid critique of this. He's bringing very valid questions, and we saw that with the Ted Cruz, interview. He brought a lot of very valid questions, and I think the same thing with like Thomas Massie. And what's happening now is because they're not falling in line with Donald Trump, all of a sudden now they're seen as anathema to the MAGA base. And I think that it's evidence of the fact that America First and the MAGA movement, it's no longer based upon Trump's worldview. It's based upon Trump and his decisions that he makes right now. I have Donald Trump's book on my bookshelf right now that he wrote before he ran for office, that he came out, that was basically his entire policy statement on, that he laid out before he announced that he was running for president. Like, this is not what's in that book. This is not what he sold to everybody when he came out with MAGA and America First and all of that. But all of a sudden now, because Tucker Carlson is more aligned with the old Donald Trump of that worldview that he laid out, because he's not morphing with what Donald Trump is doing now. Now he's seen as a traitor. He's not a part of the movement. He doesn't represent MAGA. He doesn't represent America First. And I'm over here looking at this, and I'm like, I always say, I was a Trump guy going all the way back to 2012. I wanted him to run instead of Mitt Romney. And I was severely disappointed that Trump didn't run, and he backed out and endorsed Mitt Romney back in 2012. And so, like, I always say, like, I've been a Trump guy since before all the rest of these Trump sycophants, right? And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, this is not the reason why so many people came over and supported Trump. And guys like Tucker Carlson, I think, are bringing up valid critiques, valid conversations, valid questions that need to be answered. Thomas Massie, same thing. We do need a process. We do need to ask these questions. What's the end game? I don't understand what the end game is when it comes to Iran. Nobody's told me what the end game is. Like, you could say, oh, regime change, or, oh, we need to denuclearize Iran. But what does that actually mean? Because you're going to have to get in there and deal with the nitty gritty. You're going to have to deal with that. And on top of that, when you look at the worldview of the people of Iran, they're not burning for democracy, like in the way that they always tell us, right? So what are we going to do? Like, I don't understand the end game of this unless we're looking at another 20-year war. Like, there is no game plan. I don't understand this.
Yeah, Stratfor, the think tank, constantly talks about what U.S. foreign policy is, and they're right about some things, wrong about others. But one of the things I think they do get right is about what the goal of U.S. foreign policy is. It's about disruption the disruption of regional emerging superpowers. Iran is the emerging, or should be emerging, regional superpower in the Middle East for obvious civilizational and size and economic and political reasons. And the US just wants to disrupt it. We don't have war aims in the traditional sense of we are going to go in and drive the Iraqis out of Kuwait, and then we will declare the war over. We don't have a war aim in we are going to demand the complete defeat of Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. This is like the lack of answers is part of the system. And I don't think this is the way things work now, but I don't think it's a good way to run a country or a foreign policy.
No, you're totally right. And this, I feel like we're getting set up for a very long-term war while being told that this is just a one-off. And and it's interesting. I have a buddy of mine, that's friends with General Flynn. And now Flynn, again, controversial. I like some things about him. There's a lot of things I don't like about him, whatever it is. But he recently went and he met with Trump for a few days in the Oval Office, maybe a few weeks ago. And he told my friend, he's like, we're screwed, because 75% of the people that are surrounding Trump are these neocons, right? They can't be trusted. They're the establishment neocons and all that kind of stuff. And so now we're seeing the results of this staff selection. And I trash Susie Wiles all the time. I do not trust her. I think she's completely antithetical to everything that is the America First agenda. She's the Dick Cheney of this administration. And I have a lot of concerns about her and the people that she's selecting to surround Donald Trump. I don't see the end game except for a long-term war, which I don't think that MAGA and America First wants. But I also feel that if Donald Trump gets us into a long-term war, and let's say Iran falls for this false flag, like you were talking about, Manila, I think that the MAGA sycophants will fall in line and they'll push this. We need to destroy Iran. We need to do this.
Right.
But again, nobody is selling me on the strategy. Nobody's selling me on the agenda. Nobody's selling me on the end game. Nobody's selling me on why. But why are we actually doing this outside of the overly generalized statement, we don't want Iran to get nuclear weapons, which is the exact same overgeneralized statement of, we don't want Iraq to get WMDs. Okay, so but what does that mean tangibly? I need a strategy. How do you affect this? How do you keep this from happening? And I'm not being told what that answer is. And I will say this as well. Thomas Massey getting bashed by Trump, like you said. I think he's going to get reelected and all that. But like I've said many times, he's the only candidate. And I've said this for a long time. I'm not going to endorse candidates anymore. I'm tired of this. Also, I'm getting into tech and all that, so it's a little bit of a different world for me. Thomas Massey, the only person I'm endorsing right now. And if I have to go to his state and campaign and do whatever it is, I will do it, because I'm sick of this. Like, you have to be a part of the Trump cult or else we're going to destroy you mentality. Like, Thomas Massey is the only candidate I am or will endorse coming up in these midterms.
Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. Manila's going to stay on with you, but I've got to bow out.
No, we got to wrap. It's almost 11 o'clock.
I'm
anyway,
wrapping. I'm gone. Bye, guys.
Oh, Ted's got to run. Robbie, I'm going to add you to the stage if you have one last question for Jeff, because we'll bend his ear for a full hour here.
Well, not so much a question. I mean, just more of a statement. I mean, I was MAGA back in 2016. I love candidate Trump. What sealed the deal for me with Trump back in 2016 was that debate in South Carolina on Valentine's Day, when he destroyed Jeb Bush by calling out, in front of the entire world, the lies that the Iraq War were based on.
Yeah,
that's the Trump I wanted. I got Benjamin Netanyahu and John McCain instead. So Trump lost me back in 2018. We started pushing red flag laws. We started saying, well, you take the guns first, you do due process second. That's not what I voted for. That's not what I'm about. And here with this term, I didn't vote for Trump. I voted third party.
The big
because I knew it's going to
bill,
be more of the same. Yeah,
that's gone to junk. Where is that now? That's gone to junk. We're now focusing on Iran, and where's the peace deal for Ukraine? I mean, none of it has come to fruition. Not just zilch zero.
In my opinion, Trump has failed in every way, shape, and form. I think that mass deportations, that's gone. Trump has spent all of his political capital on Iran. I think that his domestic agenda is toast. And the fact that he's going after the fact that he's going after Rand Paul, who when Trump was politically dead was the only Republican senator who stood up for him and said Russiagate was a lie. And then Trump goes after him, just like he's going after Thomas Massey. That just goes to show me that Trump, he tapped into something. His instincts were right. But in my opinion now, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, I see Trump as the biggest enemy that the of the America First movement has. He's the biggest enemy.
There are a lot of right-wing influencers in part of this new divorce that are saying MAGA is bigger than Trump. And even if he turns on it, they're still with the movement itself. And that basically that he should be deposed and there should be like a coup for the MAGA movement. But who would it be? And then Trump fires back and says, I invented MAGA. So you like, bro, I don't think you get, like the meme culture, you can invent something, but other people can do it better. So who?
But Manila, this is, and I think this is a very important point for the MAGA crowd to consider, right? Is that the whole idea of America First and MAGA was the worldview that Donald Trump sold to the American people. It was when he came down that escalator and he laid down his agenda in that first speech, people flocked to him, not because he was a celebrity, but because he laid out a particular agenda that everybody's like, finally, somebody's going to talk about this. It wasn't Rand Paul. So I remember in that election cycle, Rand Paul came out with his, like, I forget if it was like 68-point plan to deal with illegal immigration. It was super complicated and convoluted. And Trump's like, build a wall and deport illegals. Can we do that? And people are like, yeah, let's do that. Like, it's a very simplistic thing where you're just like, yeah, I can get behind that. That was the beauty of Donald Trump when he ran for president, right?
Agreed.
That was the agenda that he sold to the American people. Look, let's not get in wars. Let's root out the corruption. Let's kick out all the illegals. Let's build a wall. All that kind of stuff. But now here we are, where now MAGA has morphed from being about the worldview that he sells to the American people to now it's Donald Trump's movement. And I think that's the problem that we're now faced with is this a political party that Donald Trump is basically the king of the political party of America First, or is this a worldview of people? And this is where Thomas Massey is right. He is America First, and he is putting America first. I would say that I'm America First because I want to put America first. Tucker Carlson is America First because he wants to put America first. Yeah. Exactly. But it's a worldview. It's not a Trump sycophant mentality. It's not a cult worship. And I think that's where this divorce is lying, is you have the people that are following Donald Trump, and then you have people that are following the worldview that he laid out when he first ran for office. And that's where I think that this divorce is falling into, that I think we need to be able to figure out, okay, so now which one is going to win the America First movement? Is it going to be the worldview, or is it going to be the personality? If it's the personality, we're going to have Donald Trump, and then we're going to have J.D. Vance, and then probably Don Jr., and then it's just going to go down this line of this MAGA world where they're passing the mantle to the next guy. Or is it going to be the worldview, which is going to be more the Thomas Masseys, the Rand Pauls, the people that are ideologically America First? And that's where this divorce is. And if I have to pick, I'm picking the Thomas Massey, Rand Paul side. I'm not picking the MAGA sycophant, Donald Trump worship side.
I'm with you on that. I'm not even a Republican, and I support Thomas Massey over and over and over because it's sane and sound worldviews on how we handle. It's not isolationism, although the granddaddy of that, Ron Paul, who I adore too, and is honestly just a kind, very sane, still sharp as a tack, and not in the Joe Biden kind of way. But he was the granddaddy of saying, like, let's not get involved in all of these foreign conflicts. Like, let's fix America. I would say he was the granddaddy of America First. And he, to that point, like the idea of what America First means. And as I'm the child of legal U.S. immigrants who came in through the front door, I have appreciation for that. I am the American dream. And so I have appreciation for the process. I have appreciation for our laws. I have appreciation for our culture, our freedom of speech. I have every hope in my heart that my son, who is only a little bit older than yours, Jeff, will not get drafted to go to fight some forever war halfway around the world, number one. Number two, I would love to see my fellow Americans be able to afford a house, to keep up at least with the rise of inflation. I would love for people to get off the street. I mean, I've had homelessness impact immediate family members of my own. I would love, that's America first. Let's my husband is a vet. Let's take care of our vets. Let's take care of mental health. Let's get people jobs, pay levels that match the rate of inflation. That's America first. It's not this guy on the screen, because the first guy who presented it, and maybe he was ahead of his time, was Ron Paul. And I'm a big fan of Dr. Paul. And that's, even though I'm technically a registered Democrat, I haven't voted that way ever since I discovered Ron Paul in the early 2000s. And I went, wow, this makes sense. And Trump kind of hijacked all of those ideas and made them marketable.
It's a very good point, because the thing that I've always said about Ron Paul is that, like, when he ran for president, was it 2012? Was it 2012 that he ran last time?
And 12, I think.
Yeah, and I remember, and I've said this many times. Ron Paul running for president was the precursor to Donald Trump being able to run in 2016 and MAGA, totally. Right? But and the beauty of Ron Paul running for president was that I don't think he ever actually had a legitimate chance to win the nomination. Obviously, the primaries are rigged. They're going for the establishment candidate. Okay, fine. Totally. But what Ron Paul did is, by qualifying to get on the debate stage, he forced uncomfortable conversations that made sense to the average everyday person. And so while, Mitt Romney ends up winning the primaries, you have Ron Paul, who now he starts planting all these seeds in people's minds. Like, why are we getting involved in these wars? Why do we have the Fed? Why is inflation happening? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? And he forced uncomfortable conversations. You read Donald Trump's book about his policies, it's a lot of Ron Paul policies that he absorbed into his America First agenda. And so like you said, Ron Paul is kind of the godfather. When you think about it, he's the godfather of the MAGA movement before Donald Trump even came around. And so when you're looking at this, a lot of people came over and supported Donald Trump because of the fact that he was saying, yeah, why are we getting involved in wars? Military industrial complex is corrupt. The agencies are corrupt. Look at all this corruption that's happening with the politicians and all these wealthy, rich people and all that kind of stuff. The idea of America First was Americans first. Because the definition of America is American. It's the everyday people. It's we the people. We're supposed to be a self-governed society. But the problem is that it's morphed into this mentality where Trump now thinks he can do whatever he wants with executive order. He's basically he can be king. He can just implement whatever kind of agenda he wants. And the ends justify the means. And if you get in his way, he will destroy you. And there is no more like understanding or being able to debate the issues or discuss, because then he just sticks Laura Loomer on you or any of these other cat turd or whatever it is on you. And you're just like, okay, but is this really the direction that we should be going? I want to be able to foster conversations. I want to be able to foster debates. I want to be able to discuss and debate the nuance of how is this going to play out, or how are we going to deal with inflation, or how are we going to deal with X, Y, and Z. And we can't have that because it's just Trump said, I disagree. Now we just butt heads with each other, and then now this is very dangerous, I think, for the future of the conservative movement as well. The fact that Donald Trump is now setting up that PAC, and I think it was one of these campaign managers that's heading up the PAC to take out Thomas Massie. Like, they're going to funnel probably tens of millions, possibly even like $100 million into that one congressional race. When you think about it, which is absurd, but it's because Thomas Massie is not falling in line with what Donald Trump is trying to do. That is dangerous when you can't even have a differing opinion on a particular issue. That just because he's not voting for the war and he's not voting for the big beautiful bill, which I think could be the end of humanity as we know it because of those AI regulations that are in there. I think that is one of the most horrific things that could end up meaning it's worse for humanity than Kamala Harris becoming president of the United States. It's crazy.
You know who I think would actually back Massie to fight this new PAC? Elon Musk.
Interesting.
because
have
Musk, they're on the outs, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think he'll necessarily be out campaigning for him, but I think he would probably be a big time donor just as a big pushback to Donald Trump doing this, because Elon Musk, that is, has retweeted many of Massey's positions on this, especially on the big beautiful bill. So I think there's a good chance there that we might actually see Elon Musk not play as prominent a role as he did in this election cycle, but I think he might still wade in by way of making it rain on the Massey campaign, the re-election campaign. And I think Massey's got a firm hold of his seat anyway, so I don't think there's anything there. Go ahead.
That's part of the problem. I mean, if you can buy government, by definition, you're not in a republic, you're in an oligarchy. So let's not do that. Let's not play that game. And let's have a quick question before you pull the plug on this, Jeff.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the primaries are corrupt, and I completely agree with you. With the electoral system, except the way that it is there any chance for actual real America First people to win primary elections and start chipping away at establishment power, or is it over?
No, it's definitely doable, and I know. So I backed in my local race. I'm down here in District 47 in California. Last time around, there was Maxi Crapina. He ran. I endorsed him. He would have been phenomenal. But the Orange County GOP had endorsed, the establishment guy literally the second he announced that he was running, and he's lost like I don't know how many races in the past. No chance of winning, but they backed him. The thing that I realize is that the way that we have to win is we have to figure out how to have some sort of infrastructure and some sort of way of raising money, because there is a disadvantage to anybody who's going to challenge the system, because you're going to have the GOP will actually put additional money in order to pushing their endorsed candidates. So not only do you have to overcome the fundraising of the establishment candidate that you're taking on, but then you have to overcome all the money and the fundraising of the Republican Party that you're running as a part of. And so the thing that I realize is that we have to have some sort of fundraising tool. We have to have some sort of infrastructure in order to take that on. If anybody could have done it, it would have been Donald Trump. But the problem is instead of taking on the system, he ends up joining the system. And I think that's part of the problem that we're dealing with. So then now we have to figure out, as a people and a collection of people, how do we come together and actually put together some sort of infrastructure, some sort of way to raise money, some sort of way to actually take on the system. Because the thing is that as long as these candidates are one-offs, they can be picked off one by one. But if you can figure out some way of coalescing and come together as a group where you have each other's backs, we can raise money, we can take on the system. You almost need a party within a party to a certain degree, which the Tea Party had potential for that until they got hijacked. And I know one of the co-founders of the party, and he told me many times, he's like, one of the biggest mistakes that we made was staying decentralized. And because then what ended up happening is then you had all these individuals that would start PACs. Then they would start running it. It was like Tea Party USA, Tea Party Conservative Movement, right. Tea Party this, Tea Party that. And everybody was trying to piggyback off of the Tea Party movement and just make a bunch of money for themselves. And he's like, what we should have done is we should have organized from the very beginning, have some sort of structure, something to where we don't get hijacked. I feel like we need that. We need almost a party within a party that can have some sort of infrastructure to take on the system. But right now, when you have 400 and some odd challengers around the country that are all trying to individually raise money and take on the system, it's very difficult to do that until we can figure out how to organize and come together. And until somebody figures out how to do that, we're just SOL basically.
We need reforms in our electoral process. That's what it is. The campaigning and all of it. There needs to be mass federal reform. Maybe turn back Citizens United is one way, because then you get to see, you pull back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz. But while that curtain's there, we have Elon Musk, who is floating the idea of, hey, should we have a new third party? It's like, dude, there's been third and fourth and fifth parties out there that they can't even get on the stage because of our stupid election system, and how they have, on the Democrat side, it's one set of rules. On the Republican side, it's another set of rules, how you get on, all 50 ballots and blah, 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 blah. Yep. We need one uniform system to be like, hey, here's how you get to be on any state ballot. Like, you need this many signatures, you need this much money in the coffers, and just make it plain, clean, and simple. Whereas the Democrats have 50,000 different rules that they keep changing. The DNC does.
Yep.
Every step of the way in order to sandbag, people with real movements like Bernie Sanders did. So that way they can keep getting establishment people like Hillary and like Biden.
Right.
So until we get that, we're going to have this oligarchical system. We're going to keep having Elon Musk control. I mean, henceforth, I would say he's going to be a key player and kingmaker. We're going to have Miriam Adelson. We're going to have foreign influence, big money. Actually, I don't know if she's a dual citizen, but maybe Miriam Adelson's a dual citizen. Maybe, I don't know. But at any rate, you're going to have these ultra rich people swaying elections because we have no electoral reforms on how we do this. So the Republic, as you've said to me a million times, Robbie, the Republic died like 100 years ago. So what difference does it make? This is the game we're in now, and this is what we have. So you got to make do with what you got, right? Like, deal with the country you got, not the one that you're wistful for from 100 years ago. So we got Elon Musk, we got Jeff Bezos, we got Mark Zuckerberg, we have tech oligarchs. So how do you position them to be a force for good for your however you define good?
You join Pickaxe. That's how you do it.
Yeah. So you guys go ahead and do that. Pickaxe is up and running. And check out Jeff's 2 shows in the middle of the week. Yeah, Tuesday and Wednesday.
Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I've got so actually tomorrow I've got on the Jeff Dornick show. I've got Colonel Rob Manus is joining me, and he's a retired colonel in the Air Force. But interestingly, his job. So he was very high up in dealing with like nuclear weapons and all that. So he actually wrote the presidential handbook for how to deal with nuclear weapons and nuclear war. And so we're going to have him on because he's been very critical of the handling of this Iran strike, even though he's been an America First guy since day one, pretty much. But like he said, interestingly, and I'll throw this out there as kind of a teaser for tomorrow. He was concerned before they did the strike because he's like, if you bomb one of these facilities and they happen to have connected the nuclear material with a warhead, now you're dealing with a nuclear explosion. He's like they should have gone in and actually had basically boots on the ground, which I know Trump doesn't want. But we have no way of knowing, did we actually destroy the materials? Because nobody's seen it. We're just basing it off of intelligence. And so we're going to talk a lot about that in the aftermath. And he's like, this can't just be a one-off strike. There's a lot more things that we have to do to make sure if you're actually trying to end their nuclear program, there's a lot of other sites, a lot of other things that you're going to have to do. It's not just this one-off strike. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow on the show at 10 o'clock Pacific time. So
yeah, I will definitely be watching. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Stuff. Thank you, Jeff. All right. So that is going to do it for the TMI show. Unless, Robbie, do we have a word from a sponsor anywhere that we have to read?
We do. Hold on 1 second. I'll pop it on up here and we'll make this happen.
I'll read it. If you just click the buttons, I'll read the ad since we're short 1 TED.
All right, let me pop it over onto our chat for you here. 1 second. It has to populate.
Yeah, that's this divorce is very bad, Robbie. Very bad. All right. And America, like all the voters are like the kids in the divorce.
Yeah.
All right.
Pretty much. Right. It's there for you.
Okay, here we are. All right. A word from our sponsor. Still haven't tried 1775 coffee? Now is your shot. The 1775 starter kit just dropped, only 1,000 units. You're getting the bold, dark roast that hits harder than a CNN fact check, the smooth medium roast, and the Vitality mushroom coffee for clean energy and laser focus, no crash, all single origin, small batch, toxin free, and mold free. Plus, you're also getting a gold spoon clip because freedom isn't scooped with plastic. A frother strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's political opinions, and a black 1775 tumbler that says, I don't take life advice or caffeine. From a woke sea witch. $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours only for $99. This is for the ones who've been watching 1775 blow up here on Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Apparently it is, because our producer Robbie has been drinking it. And he's able to work on and on and on. So go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're all gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. Start your day with coffee that actually backs what you believe. All right, so 1775 coffee. Thank you for that.
Yep.
So that'll do it for us. We'll be back tomorrow with more of our normal format, unless God knows what. I don't even know. I don't know anymore. I don't make predictions anymore.
Well, we got to do another premium show, so we're going to be working on that. I know we're going to be doing a pre-tape with friend of the show, Scott Stannis. I'm going to
be in the background of that one because this is not my forte. Just like you boys don't know what perimenopause feels like for, like people like me and Scotty, because you guys are non-uterine individuals. I'm a non-last stand awareness person.
But you can fix that though, because you can read books or study things and say, oh, okay, so this is what happened. Like, no, basically what the show is going to be about is going to be about famous last stands. And so it's going to be kind of interesting. And
so it's a historical.
I'm a nerd. No, I'm a nerd. Ted's a nerd. Scott's a nerd. Yes. And Manila, she is the typical historically illiterate American that will be staying in the background. But I'm trying to pour this knowledge into her mind. So that would be
I don't know that kind of history. Just like none of you whiteys know anything about Laos or Asia. So just like you typical cis white male, non-history related.
I will take you up on that challenge any day of the week.
So you do not know anything about Laos or deep Asia history.
Try me.
You do not know about Laos.
Try me.
You do not. I will try you. You do not know zero chance you know about Laos.
Try
or
me.
Siam. No way. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. But I know
back then it was a part of Siam.
Yeah, so I think you only know portions of it. So anyway, this last stand stuff, there's no interest to me. Like Custer's last stand, I don't know, Alamo, not my thing.
Yeah, well, no, Alamo was called the Thermopylae of the West.
No idea. So that's what we're taping tomorrow. I might pop in with some questions, but I'm going to be running the stuff from the background. And I might pop in with questions. I'll learn from you nerds, because look, truth be told, that section of American history is not my area. It's not in my wheelhouse, not my jam. I don't know why. I don't have interest.
Hey, I saw just American history too. I mean, you've got Mongolian descent, so you probably want to know how the Mongolians pushed all the way over to Poland, or maybe how they tried to team up with the Crusaders to fight against
we're doing not just American last stands?
No, it's famous last stands.
Oh, all around the God, geez.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got to remember. Right. I mean, no, there are certain battles, Manila, that have impacted the course of history. I mean, to this day.
Fair.
And so you have things like that come into play. Like, for example, whenever your ancestors, the Mongols, were pushing east, why did the Russians become subservient to them as opposed to joining with the Poles? There's a reason for that. It's called the Battle of the Ice. So, I mean, the Poles are trying to convert the Russians through the force of arms to Catholicism, and the Russians weren't having it. The Mongols didn't care who you worship as long as you paid your taxes. So it made perfect sense.
Save that knowledge for the thing tomorrow. So
this is the teaser. I mean, if you want to get some smarts, come to the TMI show.
It's history. That's what we have next for our upcoming Rumble Premium episode. It's gonna mostly the three of them gonna be discussing and arguing about literally ancient history.
Well, the Battle of Rorke's Drift was not ancient history. It was only like 140 years ago.
Not that. We were talking about the Mongol Empire. That's ancient history. So
yeah, it's broad arcing. Y'all want to see this?
Yes, it inescapable, because it explains why culture is the way it is here 800, 1200 years later. All right, that does it for us. I'm Manila Chan. That's producer Robbie. Ted dipped out a few minutes, or at this point, 20 minutes ago. We'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Make sure you guys, if you guys are watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and follow this show. We are so dangerously close to actually finally be able to make some money on YouTube. So if you guys are enjoying the show, don't be jerks. Help us. Hit that subscribe button. That's all it takes. It doesn't cost you anything.
We have about 8,000 people who watch on YouTube a day, and I see 102 of you bastards to click the subscribe button.
Seriously, you guys are watching this show. It doesn't hurt you. Help us out. Help us continue to create this content, because seriously, Ted and I have been out of work for like 9 months. We're dying. If you want us to continue to make this thing work for your viewing pleasure or your entertainment, all you have to do is click that subscribe button on the show.
Or to hate on me. I mean, you can just hate on me too. That's fine too. I mean, there are people call me a Nazi all the time. I find it hilarious, but whatever.
That's right. Other than that, thank you very much. We'll be back again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern time, with more news and who knows what else. I don't know, weird stuff. All right, guys.
We'll
we will see you tomorrow. Adios, amigos. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.